All my life, I've been building, driving, riding, studying, and admiring fast, overpowered stuff. And if you're addicted to power, speed, and acceleration like I am, you're always in search of more power. More is never enough. And it's rare that a technological breakthrough comes along that provides a real significant increase in the power available for a certain kind of vehicle. Well, that breakthrough has happened now with tabless lithium-ion cells. Okay, I had already recorded a long, detailed intro for this video. I decided, screw that. I promise this will be shorter, and it's going to be. In short, I've been fascinated with tabless cell technology since 2020, when Tesla introduced their 4680 tabless cells. They seemed like a really huge technological breakthrough and performance improvement. What you need to know about tabless cells, the really short version. First, they're better, significantly better. It's not a small increase in performance, it's a significant increase. Next, the tabless cell design, which I'm going to try to explain really briefly in a second, provides lower internal resistance. What that means is that you have less voltage sag with tabless cells, lower temperature increase, and way more maximum amp capability from tabless cells than traditional cells. Next, they're not more expensive than regular cells. In fact, they're cheaper and more efficient to produce. And finally, my results here, to me, are really, really exciting. I think you're going to find that they're exciting too. There's some surprises, but for me, these results and the performance of these cells is pretty amazing. Enjoy the test. Why are tabless cells better? Can somebody explain to me why tabless is better? I've heard that it's better, but what's the real reason? Well, to be honest, I have been very reluctant and apprehensive to do this section of the video. The reason is I know I'm going to have battery engineers in the comments who are going to be all over me and say, oh, you missed this point, you didn't explain this thoroughly enough, you didn't talk about this, or this was wrong, or whatever. Like I've said before, I'm not a battery engineer. I'm just a dude who likes to build fast stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cover a few of the main points really briefly, but for more in-depth research, if you really want to research more on why tabless is such a big improvement, in the description, I'm going to link some great videos that describe it in depth and some scientific papers that talk about it as well. So I'll link that for more information. I highly recommend you check those out so you really know the deal about why tabless cells are such an innovation. Here's my very, very short and incomplete, absolutely incomplete version. Okay, by the design of tabless cells, by their design, they produce cells which have less internal resistance. Less IR has a lot of benefits. Mainly it means you have less voltage drop under the same load, which you'll see right in my testing. You have less heat increase under the same given load, you see in my testing. And what that means is, in other words, by that less heat increase, less voltage drop, tabless cells are better at making high power. They can put out a lot of amps better than tab cells. Lithium-ion batteries, you probably already know this, but most people have seen at least the basic on how they're made. And in general, they're made with a jelly roll, which is kind of a flat sheet, a layered sheet that is then rolled up into kind of looks like a jelly roll, and then the outer casing is put on. In traditional tab cells, and pretty much all the cells on the market now, the electrons, when they're trying to get out, they're traveling all the way along the length. If you think of start from the outside and going all the way rolling around to the inside, they travel the whole length of the roll before they reach the end of it, which is like right in the center of that battery, and then they get out of the battery at the end of that roll via a wire that's connected to a tab that's connected to the outside one end of the casing on the battery. So the electrons travel a long distance along that roll. In tabless, the design is different, where the electrons go kind of straight, longitudinally, long way, sideways, straight to the end of the battery, travel a much shorter path. And like I said, that allows you to have higher amp discharge, which is shown very clearly on these batteries, 45 amps, 70 amp, 100 amp, much more than regular tab. But the other thing that's cool is Another benefit, you can also have higher amp charging, and pretty ridiculously high amp charging, but it does reduce the cycle life, and we're going to talk about that later. The EVEs say you can do 2 amp per cell charging up to a maximum of 8 amps per cell, which is pretty amazing. That means a 9-piece Surron pack, you can charge at 72 amps. And the Ampace can even do up to 12 amps charging, which is over 100 amp charging rate, which is pretty crazy. Also, one thing I learned from researching this more is that amazingly, the tabless cells are more efficient and cheaper to produce than regular tab cells, which is pretty amazing. So besides all the benefits power-wise that you get from tablets, they're actually cheaper to produce. One of the main reasons from the scientific paper I read is because the machine that rolls out the jelly roll, the jelly roll that goes through the production process, with regular tab cells, that machine has to turn and run and then stop intermittently, and then run and then stop, and it's running intermittently. Whereas with the tablets, the machine that rolls the jelly roll runs continuously, so it's more efficient to produce. So that's pretty cool. One other quick thing to mention, you'll see in my photos here and on other tests, the tablet cells here have a spiral on the bottom. I wasn't sure what that was for initially, but then I was reading in EVE's tech papers about it, and basically that is a marking that shows where to not weld. So when you're doing your welding, when you're attaching to your pack, where that spiral is, do not weld there. That is a sensitive area that should not be heated up by welding. So where those spirals are, that's on the negative terminal right in the middle. When you're building your pack, don't weld where the spiral is. So anyway, that's my really short version on tablets. I'm sure I'll hear lots of great criticisms of my description of why tablets is better. So have at it in the comments. Let me know how much smarter you are than me as far as being a battery engineer and what I missed about the benefits. Okay, and just really briefly, I want to just give a quick credit to Mooch. Like I said in the Molicel video, he's the godfather of battery testing, so his work is kind of the reference on all of this. He got these cells first, which makes sense, and tested both of them. I'm just going to show here briefly his results on the EVE. I got really excited when I saw this, these voltage drop curves. I think he published this about a month ago from when I'm filming this in mid-October. Anyway, I'm going to also just do some screenshots showing his opinions and what he said about it, that it's basically the best performing high amp performance cell that he's ever tested, which I agree. So I saw these voltage drop curves. I got super excited because I was looking at the initial voltage drop where the curve kind of goes from straight down and then curves like at a 45-degree angle and then goes to the very gentle slope. That's my initial voltage drop that I measure, talking about for hole shots or drag racing, why it's significant. And in his test, I was looking at the 40 amp curve, and the EVE was showing like 0.2 volts less voltage drop at 40 amps compared to the Molicel P50B, which is pretty amazing for me. So I was really excited seeing this, that it was a huge improvement. So I'll just show some screenshots from his testing here, and I highly suggest you check it out because he goes over everything really thoroughly. One thing though that's kind of strange is you're going to see in the test coming up here in a second, and this is what I was expecting to see, he measured both the EVE and the Ampace right around 5.5 milliohms for internal resistance. So when I put them on to test IR, I was expecting that too, and I didn't get that at all on any of the cells that I have here, the Ampace or the EVE. It varied a little bit based on state of charge. I was trying different states of charge, 3.40, 3.60, 3.80. And what can I say about it? You'll see here the beginning of the testing where I talk about IR. One thing that Austin from 18650-217-21700.com, which is the US distributor for the Ampace cells, he mentioned that these cells, they have kind of unusual thing where it looks like they behave like they have a bit of a break-in period, that after the measurements, well, at least for capacity, the measurements actually improve after the cell has a few cycles on it. Low charge and low draw, and then low charge and higher draw cycles that they noticed in a bit of an improvement in capacity, and maybe that's going to be the case with IR too. So I'm going to check IR here at the very end after running some cycles and see if it changes. But my IR results are different than Mooch's. I was expecting to see 5-6 milliohms. Maybe my equipment doesn't measure down that low accurately. I don't know what the reason is, but anyway, so yeah, Mooch's test, definitely check it out. Like I said, he's the guru about it, the godfather of battery testing, and yeah. Okay, now I just want to quickly go over the claimed specs. The only thing I could find was one spec that they give in multiple places, which is 500 cycles at 50 amps. They don't say 500 cycles to 80%, 60%, whatever. They don't give different cycle life at lower amps. The only spec I could find from them is 500 cycles at 50 amps output. So those are the claimed specs. Okay, now, this is kind of cool. Some very cool fun with math. Won't give it away yet. We've gone over the introduction. We've gone over Mooch's results. We've gone over why tablets are better. I know you're anxious to get to the test results, but and the claimed specs. So we've gone over the claimed specs, all that stuff. Now, before we get to the testing, I want to give you an example using the Surron, my Surron build as an example of just how much crazy power we're talking about with these figures on these cells. Okay, so let's take the values that Mooch gave for the EVE, which I think is accurate actually for both of these. 45 continuous rating, 70 amp peak. Obviously both can do higher peaks. It's just a question of for how long and at what temperature increase. They can, pretty easily do 80, 90, 100 amps peak. But let's look at just for 45, 70 for now, for that. Okay, so now I've already gone through and done all the testing. You're going to see that in a minute here, but I know from my testing that the voltage drop figures that you're going to see on the tablets at 45 amps, you're going to be voltage drop down to about 366. That's actually at 40 amps, so it's going to be a little bit more. And at 70, I didn't test 70, I tested 60, and that gave 3.50 volts. Both cells were pretty much identical. So keep in mind, it's going to be, you're going to have a little more voltage drop than this, but pretty close to these figures. So this is not, fairy tale manufacturer specsmanship where they're giving amps times, 4.20 volts, 92.4, volts fully charged. No, this is realistic power levels with voltage drop. Okay, so this is what we're looking at, how many amps continuous and peak, and this is the realistic voltage, pretty close to what we're going to see. So my Surron build, I did an 80 volt 22S pack 9P, not a bunch of parallels, but that's the most I can really fit in there. So now let's talk about how many amps does that mean. So continuous, we've got 45 amps times 9 parallel. You're at 405 amps continuous, and 70 amps peak at 9 parallel, 630 amps peak. That's just absolutely nuts. My current pack, I'm lucky if I peak at just over 300 amps, so over double that. So 405 amps continuous, 630 peak. Now keep in mind, if you're going to build a pack with these cells, this requires rethinking every component of the cell. The BMS, the bus bars especially, the copper nickel bus bars, the ones that I work with and get from a manufacturer, those are tested, guaranteed up to 300 amps, but we've actually used them. I've had people that have used them up to 400 without a problem. However, 630, I don't know, I think you might have to go to thicker bus bars, thicker internal wiring, and obviously a heavier duty BMS. So to do these numbers, it's going to require upgrading on all the components in the battery pack, not just the cells. Okay, so now let's calculate some stuff with voltage drop. So you're continuous. The way to calculate it is you have 22S. your realistic volts that you're getting under load is 366. So your pack is actually only going to give you 80 fully charged. You're only going to see 80.52 volts with voltage drop times 405 amps. You have continuous 32,610 watts, 32.6 kilowatts with voltage drop. Pretty amazing. But check this out. Peak, so 70 amps, you're down to 3.5 volts now under that higher load, 22S times 350 volts. So your fully charged pack is going to go from 92.4 down to 77 straight, even with these, high power cells with this voltage drop. But look at these numbers. So you have 630 amps, 77 volts times 630. Take a look at that. 48.51 kilowatts peak on a battery pack that'll fit inside a Surron LBX on, a 150-pound bike. It's just nuts. I didn't do that in horsepower, but it's like 60 horsepower. You're talking basically Stark Varg levels of power from a light beam. It's just nuts. It's crazy. So, and again, this is taking voltage drop into consideration. It's not fairy tale numbers based on, a fully charged 4.2 cell. No, this is what's great about the testing I'm doing. You can get a really realistic, real idea of what, power you're going to put out. So anyway, long story short, very cool. So even in just a 9P pack, 22S 9P, you can do with these cells, either of them, over 32 kilowatts continuous and 48.5 kilowatts peak. Just absolutely nuts. Absolutely crazy, insane levels of power. Pretty damn cool if you ask me. Okay, about the internal resistance testing. I wanted to show you guys all the video of the nightmare I went through trying to test internal resistance on these guys. But I spent over 3 hours on it. I have over 30 minutes of video. In the interest of time, I'm not going to put you through watching 30 minutes of me doing IR testing on these cells. Here's the very short version. I'm going to show you the conclusion, the results. But what happened was, at the beginning, I was expecting to test these and just quickly see the same results that Mooch got, which was expected to be 5 or 6 milliohms on all the cells, to do that and just be done with it. That didn't happen at all. I got different results from the Ampace and the EVE, and the EVEs, even from cell to cell, I got vastly different IR readings at first. These were all straight out of the box. These were at the storage voltage that they were stored at. They were at room temperature here. They were all at the same temperature, and I was getting vastly different results, and none were 5 or 6. They were all higher. So I didn't understand that. At first, I tried to charge them to the same voltage, like 3.65 volts. I thought maybe it was an issue of the state of charge why I was seeing different internal resistance. So I did that. I was still seeing different numbers in internal resistance. I tried charging them to a higher value, 3.8 volts, was still seeing different internal resistance numbers. None of them were showing the 5 milliohms, 5 to 6 that I was expecting to see. So what I did was I went through all the tests. This I'm recording now at the very end of the testing. Went through all the tests, kind of broke in the cells, put 10 to 12 cycles on all of them, and then I went back, and the last clips, the final clips you see here, are from the end of the testing where they already had been quote-unquote broken in with 10 or 12 cycles. Went back and remeasured the internal resistance. So you can see on the paper here what those results were, but there was nothing consistent. The break-in period, they didn't provide lower internal resistance after. Some were lower, but some were higher, which was strange. None of them still really showed 5 milliohms. The one thing that I did notice was that a couple cells where I had just taken them off discharge for a few minutes, for example, 25 amps for a few minutes, and they were warmed up a little bit. Those cells, if you then let them sit for a minute or so, they showed much lower internal resistance. Then I was seeing 2, 3, 4 milliohms when they were warmed up a little bit. So the internal resistance testing was really frustrating to me because I just wanted to get, a consistent number. I tried doing them all at the same voltage and same room temperature, as close as possible to get, but as far as I know, there's no standard for measuring internal resistance at this particular state of charge and at this temperature. And for none of them did I get 5 or 6 milliohms. So again, the internal resistance testing was really frustrating for me. You can see here at the end on the paper the results that I got. If there's a big demand to see the full internal resistance 30 minutes of testing, I'll make that a separate video. But you know, the proof is in the pudding, which is the performance. The voltage drop and the temp increase on these cells show that they have to have lower internal resistance than the Molicel, because they both had, you know, as you saw, better performance in those categories. Okay, so here's the results of all the IR capacity weight tests. I'm going to just, again, make this as brief as possible. You saw on the test the issues I was having with IR. I'll go over those in a sec, because IR is really a mess. I'm very frustrated with that. Let's talk about capacity first of all. These are all down to 2.8 like I did normally. They were all very similar. 3940, 3940, 3950, 3941. They're all much better, as I mentioned several times, than the other 4000 milliamp cells, the Samsung 40T, the Lishan. You can look on that video to see, but I was seeing I think 3800s around there ish, 3750 down to 2.8, and I did measure two of these, as you can see, down to 2.5 by the industry standard, and got 4020, 4026. So that's great. Ampace and EVE have more than advertised capacity. Here you can see the weights that I measured. Again, consistent for each brand. IR, what can I say? You saw the testing there. You know, on Ampace, I got everywhere between 003, 005 for one, 007, the best for number two, to 20 milliohms new, 15 milliohms new for the other one. After break-in, which you know, I mentioned there at the beginning, wanted to also check them after break-in. The Ampace number 2, I got 009 milliohms. How to say it in a short way? I was seeing a pretty consistent pattern after I was doing more of these IR tests, which is that when the cell is warmed up a bit, hold on, let's try to lighten that. When the cell is warmed up a little bit, and or after it's just come off being on having a load on it a minute or so after, but I think really it's the factor of it being warmed up, the internal resistance reading goes way down. This is how I got these super low values, was taking it after just like a minute after it had been under load for 3 or 4 minutes and heated up like 8-10 degrees Celsius. So but it's really strange, because here on the first EVE, as you saw, I got the best reading when it was brand new, cold at not cold, but room temperature at 3.5 volts, 006. Then I charged it to 373 and got 9 milliamps. I was trying to do them all at 365 to have a valid comparison. But then after break-in, this one is higher, 012. This one, the Ampace, was lower. So again, very strange, at 3.92 volts. EV number 2, the best reading I got was 007. That was also when it was new at 366 volts. After break-in, it's showing 10 milliohms at 3.95 volts. EV number 3, that one didn't change much, 12 and 13 new, 11 milliohms after break-in. So I'm sure all the battery engineers are going to jump in here in the comments and explain to me why I'm seeing a lower internal resistance reading when the cell is warm, or when the cell has just been under load, or whatever. The point that I made during the testing, and I think just needs to be made, is there really needs to be kind of a standard for IR testing, which is it has to be at this state of charge, maybe say 3.60 volts, and this temperature, 25C, to have consistent. I was trying to do that with my 365 readings, but you can see even with that, they were sort of all over the place. So I was hoping just to pop them on the machine and, see 5 milliohms, 5, 5, 5, 5, and then just write it down and be done with it. And now internal resistance turned into a whole half-a-day project, and another 10 minutes of video that I'm sorry to put you guys through, but just to let you know that measuring IR in these is no straightforward task, because depending on how you do it, you can get between showing 5 milliohms and showing 20 milliohms. So anyway, that's it. That's what I got for IR. If you guys want, feel free to buy the cells, put them on your different testers, and write in the comments what you're getting, or the methodology you're using to get, a consistent result. Like I said, the proof is in the pudding, the proof is in the performance, and all of these obviously have lower internal resistance than the P50B because that's shown by they have less voltage drop and less temperature increase. And in general, the Ampace should have actual lower IR than the EVEs because on almost all the tests, the Ampace performed better, had lower voltage drop. So the true IR of the Ampace should be a little bit lower than the true IR of the EVE. Maybe it's just my testing machine. Maybe it's because I didn't, do them all at 31 degrees Celsius and 3.69 volts charge. I don't know, but anyway, that's it about IR. I don't want to even think of those two letters anymore for the next 6 months. Okay, let's do weights on these guys. Just making sure I'm still calibrated. So I'm going to do the EVE 40 PLs first. 6508. Double check that. 6507. Okay. Number 2, EVE 6475. Double check it. 6474. Okay. And EVE 40 PL. Number 1, 65 right on the dot. 65 right on the dot. Okay. Now we've got our Ampace JP40s. These have a sticker on them, so not really 6804 comparable with the factory spec sticker heads. A little bit. 6804. Okay, good. And Ampace JP40 number 2. 6815. I'm sorry. Okay, doing capacity of everything next. I'm going to run these tests a couple times. First at 0.25C, which is 1 amp, and then like half of that at 0.5 amp. Also, the seller of these Ampace mentioned to me that they weren't seeing the optimal capacity until you had a couple slow discharge cycles, and then one fast, one heavy discharge cycle. So anyway, this just came off the charger, and gonna do 1 amp. Okay, we just hit 360 nominal voltage on the first Ampace testing, and look at that, we're at 2657 milliamp hours, 2658. So well over, we'll see what the final capacity tests out at, but well over 50% of capacity used, from 420 down to 3.60, 50% by voltage. Starting capacity. Okay, so second Ampace is done with the capacity test, and these are both performing really well. 3924, the first one even showed a little bit higher. If you go back to my big test on the P50B comparison, all the other 4000, and remember, this is only down to 2.8, not 2.5. All the other 4000 milliamp cells, like the Samsung 40T, like the Lyshon LR217LA, those were showing much less capacity. Okay, EVE number 1, capacity, just came off full charge. Again, gonna test these at 1 amp to begin with, then do a little break-in cycles testing, and then test again. Okay, EVE number 1 is done with capacity test at 0.25C, 3940. Wow, that's great. Almost identical, yeah, to the Ampaces, and like I said, much higher than all my other 4000 milliamp cells, so definitely would be over 4000 if you ran it down to 2.5. Okay, just a quick update on the EVE. We just hit 50% discharge by voltage, and as you can see, again, way more than 50% of capacity is in the top half of the charge. So what are we at? 2441, let's call it 2442 milliamp hours used in the top half of the charge by voltage. Okay, EVE 40PL number 2 is done with the first capacity test, and 3941, very consistent, I think. Again, down to 2.8 volts, and again, quite a bit more than my other 4000 milliamp cells. So, okay, so EVE number 3 capacity test is done, 3950. So they're showing great consistency and great capacity. Like I said, way more than my other 4000 milliamp cells. I think when I rerun this a second time after some cycles here, I will run one of them down to 2.5, which I hate to abuse to do that, but just for science, really curious to see what these will show, testing the same way that the manufacturers show. So great capacity results. Okay, this is Ampace JP40 number 2. Did the capacity test again after about 12 cycles. This time I ran it at 0.5 amps. Anyway, to get the optimum result. So we got 4,020 milliamp hours, 15.0 watt hours. Yeah, so that's good. Better than, even more, a little bit than advertised. To say I'm excited about this, well, that would be an understatement. I am super excited about it. So I'm going to start with the low amp test. No, as I mentioned, I'm expecting to see, you know, much lower voltage drop and much lower temp increase than even the Molicel P50B. I'm using that as my reference. You'll recognize my result sheets from before. So what I did, and I'm going to do on all these, I'll use a P50B, which was the best performing one before, as a reference, and then compare all these tablets to the P50B, you know, to see how they perform relative to that one. So here we go. I'm starting with the constant 55-60 mile an hour test, which is simulating that on a Surron 10.416 amps for 10 minutes. Obviously not going to shoot the whole thing, but let's see how we do. $399 initial voltage drop. 393 and 23.8. 393 and 23.8. I just want to say one thing, a couple things really quick about P50B and about temp. So the temp on all these are going to be lower because before tests were done in the summertime. Now it's autumn in Ukraine, and in my crappy rental apartment with no insulation, cooler outside means cooler inside. Anyway, I want to talk just really briefly about P50B and all the results I got on P50B before we get to 3 minutes here. Some people in the comments, if you haven't watched yet, watch the P50B test video. Some people in the comments mention that, oh, you know, you got a pre-production P50B, that's why the performance was shitty, it wasn't what you expected. No, sorry, that's total BS. Here's a couple reasons why. First of all, I spoke to the distributor that I got them from. They said no, it's full production cell. Also, the same batch that I got mine from, they sold several hundreds of them, multiple hundreds from that same batch. So it definitely was production. The other thing is, Molicel's a smart company. If they had released some pre-production cells, see where we're at here, coming up 2 minutes. If they had released a P50B as pre-production, they would have labeled it as such. They would have released them just to a limited number of people, because they know, obviously, the first cells that are come out to the public, those are going to be tested, those are going to be scrutinized, those are going to be looked at really carefully. And the third point is, if they were pre-production, wouldn't it make sense if Molicel was being kind of a savvy business people to release the best, cherry pick the best, absolute best performing cells, to release those as pre-production, you know, because people are going to be testing, rather than the crappiest. So anyway, my P50B, I don't buy the argument that they perform bad because they were pre-production. Okay, coming up on 3 minutes here, we are at 389 and 25.1. 389 and 25.1. I'll pause it here in a sec, but I just want to finish about the P50B. So yeah, my results on the P50B were crappy. I was expecting better. It barely, you know, did better than the 45. I do still have some more P50Bs ordered, waiting for them, still waiting over 6 weeks for them. When I get more P50Bs, I'll do an update and, you know, show if the results are better on subsequent cells. But I don't buy the argument that, you know, the poor performance compared to what I was expecting, compared to the 45, that it was pre-production. I don't buy that argument at all. So anyway, that's it. Now we'll pause for the later results. Okay, come up on 5 minutes on the first Ampace. 386, 26.4. 386, 26.4. And just looking briefly here at very initial results. So P50B at the same time was 382. And, well, voltage drop, we got to look at the delta temp, so we can't compare that yet, but it's like +3. So definitely less voltage drop. I'm expecting to see larger improvements, larger differences at the higher amps. I'm starting here at the lowest amp test, which is the 10.4. Okay, here we're coming up on 10 minutes, and it's already kind of interesting. Temperature wise, look at that, we're at 28.3. We started at 23.5. We're at that, right? 23.5. So we're already at a +5 Celsius, and the 45 P50B was only plus 4.9. That's kind of a surprise. Okay, hold on, let's mark it 10 minutes. 368, 28.4. 368, 28.4. So, kind of interesting. I've got to go through and calculate delta T on everything, but look at that. So we do have less voltage drop at the end, which was expected, obviously. But I just noticing, look at the initial voltage drop. I got to check the video again, and we'll check on the others. But look at that. This one had more initial voltage drop than the 45 and the 50B. That's kind of strange, huh? Starting temp 23.2, hot off the charger. Ampace number 2 for the 55 mile an hour test. $398, 23.2. But again, whether it's $399 or $398, strange, huh? Initial voltage drop is worse than the 45 and 50B. 393, 23.9. 393, 23.9. And look at that, just for reference. Strange, huh? Even slightly more voltage drop after 1 minute than the Molicels. Hope it's focused because I'm watching it with my eyes. 389, 25.3. Not much difference than the Molicels. That's a surprise. Okay, coming up on 5 minutes. $386 and 26.6. 386, 26.6. So consistent with the other one. Okay, coming up on 10 minutes on Ampace number 2. And looks like it's going to be very consistent with the first one. 368 and 28.4. 368 and 28.4. Look at that. 368 and 28.4. So, okay, first two Ampace tests are done. I have to say, I'm kind of surprised. Both with voltage drop. I mean, it did better, but not a lot. But initial voltage drop really surprised me. And 28.4, that's plus over 5 degrees increase, which is more than the Molicels, which that's a surprise. Okay, here we go. EVE 40PL number 1. Starting temp 24.2, 55 mile an hour test again. All these are straight off the charger, but these were charged overnight and left to cool, and I just topped them off, so that's why the cool temperature. Okay, let's see how these do. Really, to say I'm curious is an understatement. Okay, let's go. $403, 24.1. 394, 24.6. 394, 24.6. 388, 26.1. And again, I just want to note, I'm kind of surprised. You know, I was expecting these to be much better than the drop on the Molicels and temperature. Maybe the, you know, bigger improvement, the more pronounced improvements are at the higher amp load. But so far, at least at this 10.4 amp test, I'm not seeing, you know, a huge improvement over the Molicels, which is surprising, definitely. As we're coming up to 5 minutes here, just remembered one other thing I want to mention. Somebody in the comments mentioned that I need to get thicker wire for my rig here, for these big ones. You know, 8 or 10 gauge. Yeah, 8 or 10 gauge would be really nice. These are 12 gauge. These are 14 for the voltage reading, 12 for the current. But I think in, you know, my 3-inch lengths, I don't think it's going to introduce significant voltage drop. So, plus this is what I used before. So for consistent results, I'm going to obviously keep it the same. Okay, 381, 27.6. 361, 29.9. It just hit 361. 361. I don't know if you can see that. I'm writing and holding at the same time. And 29.9. Okay. And that's like, we started 24.2, so that's over +5. That's what, plus 5.7, I guess? I gotta calculate it. But that's strange. It had better initial voltage drop, but still not any better than the 4550 Molicel. And look at the ending voltage on this. Okay. By the way, all my, as I mentioned before, all my EVEs, I actually bought them 2 different times from 2 different sellers, but these are all from the same batch, which is obviously the initial big production run. I know what's going to happen if the results on these or the Ampace are worse than expected, which so far I was expecting better. Again, maybe the big improvement will be with a high amp draw, but I know people are going to say in the comments, oh, pre-production, you know, that's why you have shitty results. It's pre-production. No, these are production cells. If these are pre-production, then Mooch and everybody else got pre-production. But no, these are, you know, I'm showing you, you're seeing along with me, you know, you can hear surprise if I have surprise. You're seeing along with me for the first time the results. So if they do, you know, I'm expecting greatness. If they don't perform greatness, people are going to, you know, scream pre-production, but I don't buy that as an excuse. I don't think that they are. Okay, EV40PL number 2 55 mile an hour test. Starting temp 25.6. .403 initial voltage drop. 403. Okay, 1 minute. 394, 25.9. 388, 26.9. 388, 26.9. Consistent. 5 minutes. 381, 28.0. 381, 28.0. Okay, come up on 10 minutes. 361, 30.0. 361, 30.0. 361, 30.0. Very consistent, still surprising. Okay, after a 2-hour break to charge this cell completely. By the way, this testing takes multiple hours and days and weeks for me to do. If you appreciate and get something valuable out of the work and testing I do here, please support my work by liking the video, subscribing to my channel, and you can support me via buy me a coffee and Patreon. So I'll put the links in there. Please support my work if it's important to you. Okay, if it helps you. So last EVE on the 10-minute test. .404 and 25.9 was our starting. 395, 26.0. Okay, 3 minutes coming up. 389, 26.9. Okay, coming up on 5 minutes. 381, 28.1. 381, 28.1. Pretty consistent. Okay, here we are, coming up on 10 minutes. EVE40PL number 3. 362, 29.9. 362, 29.9. Sorry about that. Big consistency. Hold on a sec. We'll go over the results briefly. Okay, let's briefly go over the test of the constant 55 mile an hour test. Surprising, not in a positive way, like I said, for the tabless. Hold on, let's try and straighten out here. Compared to the Molicels, voltage drop, both Ampaces did a little bit better, but only slightly, 368 instead of 364 for P50B. The EVEs did worse, slightly, surprising. At the end of 10 minutes, temp increase, On the P45B, like I said in the previous video, that did amazing. The 50 was plus 4.9. On the Ampaces, 5.1 and 4.9, very consistent, but basically equal to the P50B temp increase. Surprising. I expected this to be better. And the EVEs had a little more variation, 4.0, 4.4, and 5.7. So the best one, this number 3, performed slightly better than the others. Did better than both Molicels in temp increase, but just slightly. So yeah, I mean, maybe the bigger difference is going to be at higher amps. We'll see. You know, good consistency with all this, with the Ampaces and with the EVEs, quite consistent, but surprised to not see a bigger improvement. So next, going to do the mixed load test, which is also an kind of easier test, only little bursts of higher output. Then we'll get to the high amp test. Okay, mixed load test. Just to remind everybody, I devised this test to sort of show a real world riding experience for E-motos and Surrons, kind of how you would be on a hard trail ride or MX track, even kind of street riding. I think a lot of people ride like this, where you've got a short burst of heavy load, 23 amps I'm doing in this case, which equates to about 17 kilowatts for a Surron, and then a longer burst of shorter load, 12 amps, 8.5 kilowatts. So 17 kilowatts, 7 seconds, followed by 8.5 kilowatts for 23. That 30-second loop is repeated every 30 seconds for 5 minutes, and we see how it does after 5 minutes. In the first test, you saw the Ampace and the EVEs were super consistent. If I get the same consistency on this test, I'm not going to go through on the high amp test and test every cell. I think we'll have proven that they're consistent and that the results are the same, so I'll just test one of each on a higher load test, but we'll go ahead and do this and see if we get that same consistency. Yeah, so I just quickly jotted down here the results from the first Ampace, and that's actually pretty encouraging. Voltage drop at the end, like you saw, 376, better, quite a bit better than even the P50B, better than the P45Bs, better than everything by a pretty significant margin, so that's great. 31.1, we started at 24.9, quick math, what is that? 5.1, 6.1, plus 6.2, plus 6.2, plus 8.2, better. So yeah, it kind of trounced P50B and less voltage drop and less temp increase too. So that's good. I was getting kind of worried after that 10 amp test where there was like no improvement. It looks like, you know, with a higher load, even though this is intermittent, that's what we're seeing improvement. So, okay, we'll do the other ones and then go over all the results. But so far, that's a cool improvement. So just did some initial calculations based on the Ampace. EVEs are still charging now, but holy cow, pretty big improvement. This is what I was hoping to see. I already talked about voltage drop, 376 compared to 369. That's a big improvement. But look at these temperature numbers. There was a bit of a difference. The number one did plus 6.2 at the end. Number two plus 4.5. So that's a bit of a difference. That's pretty amazing. But both of them, look at, compared to the best performer out of the tab cells is a P50B, of course. No, slightly better, only slightly better. 8.2, 8.7 on the 45B. So plus 8.2 Celsius. Look at this, 4.5 and 6.2. So, and look at what these other cells. What did the 50S do? 13.6 Celsius. Compare the 50S, almost plus 14 Celsius, to this Ampace number 2, plus 4 Celsius. The temperature increase difference. That's pretty wild, huh? That tells you internal resistance, pretty big difference. So yeah, we're plus 8.2 on the 50B and plus 4.5 and 6. So that's pretty cool. Be interesting to see how the EVEs do. Okay, here's how it's looking so far. While other batteries are charging, just quickly go over it. With the EVEs, very consistent, 371, 371. This last one, number 2, did the best out of any of them for temperature increase. So that's cool, 5.1 and 3.9, so basically 4 plus 5. So that's good. But I have to say, a bit disappointed about the voltage drop. You know, I was really expecting, with seeing these really great results on the Ampace, to see the same on the EVE, but you can see cells are totally consistent, and even my testing methodology, it's not, you know, precise, perfect, scientific, but I think I got it close enough where these showed the exact same results. So we'll see how number 3 does. Again, if we're seeing consistency between all these, I think for the high amp test, no point to do all 3 every test. It takes like an hour, besides resetting the temp probe and putting new tape on every time. I have like an hour of charging after each individual test, and to do, you know, 5 cells times 4 tests or 5 tests each, you're talking 25-30 hours straight just for recharging each test. So anyway, we'll do number 3, see if it's consistent with 1 and 2. We can see we were 371, 371, 372, but we were equal all the way until 5 minutes. 32.9. No, this started a little higher, but this almost these two almost equal temp. So 33.0. This started 1/10 higher, so a little more voltage increase. 32.0, but I mean basically identical. Okay, so just a brief recap on the mixed load test. Our reference again was a P50B, which had voltage drop to 369, and the P45B 370, and increase of 8.7 and 8.2. As you saw, the Ampace did great, 376 compared to 370 and no 369 and 370. So much better voltage drop, much better temp increase, 4.5 and 6 compared to 9 basically. So a real, you know, definite increase in performance. The EVs, however, kind of surprisingly, well, the one thing you see is everything was really consistent, which actually I'm glad, because it shows my testing was consistent too, that, you know, I got it really close in my timing. Anyway, EVEs were all consistent, 371, 372. I think if this had stayed on for another like 2 seconds, it would have hit 371. So basically the same. Our temp increases pretty close, plus 5.1, 3.9, and 4.4. So, you know, all very low temp increase compared to the both Molicel, so that's good. But disappointed, to be honest, about these voltage drops. I expected them to be, you know, like the Ampace. So anyway, I think we've shown that the EVE on this test and the previous, very consistent. Number 2 seems to be a little bit better. I mean, the best performer by a little bit as far as the lowest temp increase. It also had the lowest temp increase on the other ones. So I think I'm going to go ahead and test with EVE number 1 and number 2. Okay, now we're starting the high amp test, what I've really been looking forward to. This is Ampace number 1. I have to say I really don't like these paper stickers on them for a couple of reasons, but mainly I don't know if it increases the diameter enough where it's going to affect how it fits in my cell holders that I normally use. But anyway, okay, so just to go over this again, we're doing 23, 30, 35, 40, 3 minutes, just coming hot off the charger. We're going to look at temp increase, initial voltage drop, and all that stuff. So here we go. Starting temp 25.4. This is 23 amp test. $384 initial voltage drop. I'm going to run EVE number 2 and number 3. Those were slightly the better performing ones. Not really necessary to run number 1. And I'm going to compare this to the P50B. On the bottom here, I've got the P50B results for the different amp levels. So we're going to use that as the reference. Okay, coming up on 1 minute. 27.8, 377. 27.8, 377. Let's just look quickly how that compares with 377 at 1 minute. Oh wow, the P50B was 370. Well, that's quite a bit better, isn't it? Well, as it should be, as I was hoping it would be. 30.8, 373. 64. Wow, that's significant, yeah? 373 compared to 364. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I was... Ooh, sorry about that. That's what I was hoping to see. We come finishing up. 33.4. 33.5. 367. Okay, about temperature, we're going to have to calculate after. But at the end of 3 minutes P50B, we were at 357. P45B also 357. So that is a major difference. 367 versus 357. A full tenth better. That's pretty impressive. Okay, Ampace number 2. I flipped around because these stickers are total shit. They stick to my tape. And anyway, Austin, from the seller of these, if you're watching, please tell the manufacturer, get rid of these stickers. That's total garbage. Anyway, okay, so this is Ampace number 2. Number 1 did great. Our starting temp is 27.6. 27.6. Here we go. $385. P50B was $382. 29.4, 377. 29.4, 377. And 50B was 370. 374, 32.1. 374, 32.1. Yeah, very significant improvement. 364. We're at with a P50B. Later, 34.3, 367. 367 and 34.3 again compared to 357 on the Molicel P50B. So I think that's the same as the previous result, and fantastic. Full tenth of a volt, less voltage drop, higher ending voltage. Okay, just some quick initial results while the other cells are charging. Calculated temp increases here. So let's look. We were after 3 minutes, this is again 23 amps, we were plus 8.1 and plus 6.7, so a little bit of a difference, but both of those a lot better than P50B. Here is P50B again, so we were plus 9.9, basically plus 10 Celsius, this 6.7 and that 8.1. So that's quite a bit better temp increase. And again, 367 any voltage, 357 on the P50B. So I would call that a pretty significant increase. Pretty big, I mean improvement. Pretty big improvement in less temp increase and pretty big improvement in less voltage drop. So pretty cool. Now we get to see how the EVEs do. 27.9 starting temp. And we're showing 420, which is good. Ready? Here we go. $388. Initial voltage drop, 388. Where were we? $384, $385. Interesting. Better than the Ampace. Up on 1 minute. We're at 30.0, 376. 30.0, 376. No, 377. Almost identical. And we are showing 33.2, 369. 369. Well, that's interesting, huh? We were 373 and 374 on the Ampaces. That's not great. P50B was 357. 367, 350. Okay, we're at 36.4, 361. Wow. 361. And sorry, going straight to white. Ampaces were 367. P50B was 357. Interesting, and I have to say, I'm disappointed, to be honest. Okay, here we go. EVE 40PL number 3. 23 amp. Just came off the charger. Showing 420. That's good. 27.2. 27.2 starting temp. $388. 29.1. 29.4. 375. 29.4. 375. Okay, coming up on 2 minutes. 32.8, 369. 32.8 and 369. Okay, coming up on 3 minutes. Just as a reminder, the other EVE was at 361. Okay, 35.8, 361. Okay, so briefly, 23 amp tests are done. Let's go over it. As I said, Ampace did the best, 367 voltage drop compared to 357 on the P50B, so that's a big improvement. The consistency, though, is really high. I mean, a lot of consistency, because look at the two EVs, 2 and 3, both 361, so slightly better than the P50B, but, you know, not a night and day, not a whole tenth better. Let's talk about temp increase. Like I said, Ampace, 6.7 and 8. Compare that to the Molicel, almost 10C. The EVEs were super consistent, 8.5, 8. Look at that, same exact voltage drop, plus 8.5, plus 8.6. So that's the good point, but the bad point is, look at this, 361, 357, 8.6, 9.9. Not a night and day difference over the P50B. I mean, it's an incremental improvement, but would that be enough to make me buy them over the P50B? If the price was the same, that is. Probably not. Of course, these are much, much cheaper. So in that case, maybe so. But anyway, so far, I have to say, you know, we have a lot of testing still to do. I'm going to be up all night doing this. But so far, at higher amp, the Ampace are performing better than the EVEs. Okay, went back to the tripod setup. Sorry if it's a little boring with a stationary camera. I'll try to make it exciting. Anyway, 30 amp, first test. This is Ampace number 1. 30 amp. So starting temp, 27.1. 27.1, 30 amps. We're zeroed out. Here we go. $378. Initial voltage drop. 30.6. 30.6. 369. 30.6, 369. Okay, by the way, that was much better at 1 minute. 2 minutes for reference. P50B was 352, 352. So big improvement, you can see. Okay, 35.1, 362. 35.1, 362. Okay, just to show here, in the P50B we ended at 343, and P45B 340. So 343 is what we're comparing to, and this is doing much better, like a tenth better. It looks like. Okay, here we go. 38.7, 353. 38.7 and 353. So that's a good improvement. Okay, so just a very quick recap of this 30 amp performance. We ended up at 353, and the P50B, hello, where are you? 343. P45B was 340. So 0.1 higher voltage ending, which is great. And this is cool too, plus 11.6 temperature. And look at where we were on the P50B, plus 18.0. Plus 18.0, and the Ampace only did plus 11.6. That's a huge difference. That's a huge reduction in temp increase. So pretty significant improvement at 30 amps over the P50B. Okay, after an hour and a half break, pause of charging. Every time I do this test, I have an hour and a half of charging after each one. Okay, 27.3 starting temp. Ampace number 2, 30 amps. $378 initial drop. 31.6, 370. 31.6, 370. Coming up in 2 minutes. 36.5. 37.1, 364. 37.1, 364. Okay, coming up on 3 minutes. The first Ampace was 353 for comparison. 41.1, 41.1, 354. 354 and 41.1. Okay, really quick recap of 30 amps so far in the Ampace. Very consistent voltage drop, 353, 354. Way ahead of 343 on the Molicel. Temp increase, no, a little bit. This one, all the way across the board, a bit more temp increase, 13.8 versus 11.6. On the Molicel, we were plus 18, so still, it's a lot better than that, but, you know, it is a difference, 13.8 and 11.6, not totally consistent. Kind of warm because it just got off the charger for an hour and a half, so 28.3 starting temp. $381, 32.0, 365. Come up on 2 minutes. 37.7, 356. 37.7, 356. Okay, come up on 3 minutes, and I have to say, you know, we'll analyze it, but it's doing worse than the Ampace. I'm kind of shocked. Okay, 42.0, 346. 346 and 42.0. Okay, this is EVE 40PL number 3 at the 30 amp test. I have to say, now obviously we're gonna analyze the results and go over it, but I'm already seeing a pattern here, which is these are performing pretty significantly worse than the Ampace. I'm really surprised. I don't know why I was expecting them to have like basically equal performance. You know, about the advertised specs, I haven't discussed that yet. I'll discuss it at the beginning of the video, which I haven't filmed yet, but I haven't even really looked at them closely recently to memorize. I didn't want to be biased going into this, but my assumption, because they're both 4,000 milliamp tablets, and I've seen, you know, like 100 amp, 140 amp peak, you know, marketing, I just assumed that these were going to be very, very similar in performance, but we're seeing there's actually a pretty big difference. I'm really shocked. So, okay, 28. Sorry, I'm right next to the phone. 28.6 30 amp. $379. Okay, come up on 2 minutes. 33.6. 33.6, 365. Sorry, that was 1 minute, obviously. 2 minutes is coming up. Again, I know what I'm going to see it in comments. You know, if these perform poorly, worse than expected, they're going to say pre-production, pre-production, pre-production. No, it's not valid. No, these are not pre-production. This cell is being sold everywhere, all over the place. AliExpress, Alibaba, they're being sold. It's full production. So no excuse of pre-production for poor performance. Okay, here we go. 40.2, 357. And I want to just make a note that even with these appearing to be, performing a lot worse than the Ampace, they still, so far, are a little bit better than the P50B at a much, much, much cheaper price. But keep in mind, less capacity. Not 20% less, because P50B actual capacity was less than advertised. But anyway, here we go. 45.1 and 347. 45.1 and 347. Okay, brief 30 amp recap and a little bit shocking results on something. Already talked about the Ampace 353 and 354 compared to 343 on the P50B, so significantly better performance. Voltage drop 11.6, 13.8 compared to 18, so significantly better temperature. But the EVs, look at this, 346, 347, so they're consistent, but look at that compared to 353 and 354, a lot more voltage drop, and 343 only slightly better than the P50B, like 3 100ths or 4 100ths, so just a little bit better. And the temp increase 16.5, 13.7, that's compared to 13.8 and 11, so a bit more temp increase. Molicel was plus 18.0, so again, it's just really fractionally better than the P50B, where I would say the Ampace was significantly better. But like I said, keep in mind, you're talking, I'm filming this second week of October 2024. You're talking about a cell that you can get at 200 quantity for $3.50 versus a cell that's selling for like $13.50 or $12. So a $3 and change cell versus 13. Now obviously capacity is less, but remember on my P50B test, this measured less than the advertised capacity. It was only 8% higher than the P45B. So of course, now this actually measured more than the advertised capacity, which is really interesting. So it's incrementally better at 30 amps than the P50B, much cheaper, like a quarter or a third of the price. Need to exactly measure it. But if these are equal price, which I'm going to go over at the end, pricing, if these were equal, so far it's pretty clear on all the tests that the Ampaces are performing better than the EVE 40PLs that I have here. Okay, here we go. 35 amp. How much better is it going to do than the Molicel? Hot off the charger, like usual, 420 volts, 28.4. This is, by the way, Ampace number 1. So 28.3 Celsius, 28.3. Here we go. $372. Come up on 1 minute. The Molicel P50B was 350. 34.4, 362. Okay, at 2 minutes, the P50B was 340, 340. Look at that. That's a big improvement. Okay, here we go. 40.8, 356. Wow. This is pretty damn impressive. The P50B at 3 minutes was 3 330. Also the P45B, 330. Look at that. Much less voltage drop. Okay, here we go. 46.6, 344. Okay, 29.2. $374. Okay, come up to 1 minute. A reminder, the Molicel at 1 minute was 350. So definitely seems like more improvement the higher the amp draw. 34.8, 365. 34.8, 365. Okay, come up on 2 minutes. The Molicel was 340 after 2 minutes. 41.6, 356. Okay, come up in 3 minutes. The Molicel was 330, as a reminder, after 3 minutes. $46.5, 344. Okay, we got the first set of 35 amp results, and wow, this is impressive. The bigger the load, the higher the amp draw, the more improvement the tablet cells seem to have. So let's look at the end of 3 minutes. Again, 35 amps here. We were both at 344. Hello, there we are, 344. So very consistent. The P50B was 330, and the P45B was also 330. So that is a huge improvement. 0.14 volts higher, less voltage drop. 2 minutes, what were we at? We're at 340 on the P50B and 356. Huge difference. Also, look at the temperature. Now, these did gain at 3 minutes, 18 plus 17.3, so very consistent. As you can see, super consistent results. 18, 17.3, which, yeah, that's a pretty decent temperature increase, 46 degrees. But look at where the P50B was, 26.3. So 17, 18 Celsius increase versus 26. That's huge. That's just a perfect example showing why the tabless design is much better with lower internal resistance, much better at not getting hot, at not overheating under high load. So really exciting results. This is, in my opinion, this is 330 to 344, and the temperature difference, that is a significant increase in performance over the P50B. And it seems like the higher the amps we go, the more the difference is. At 10 amps they were almost identical. Now we're seeing some real differences. By the way, just real quickly, I forgot to mention about initial voltage drop. So we were at 372 and 374 on the Ampace, and look at that on the P50B, 364. That's significant also. Okay, EVE 40PL number 2, 35 amp, 28.0 starting. $375, 34.6, 359, 34.6, 359. I just felt to see if my 12 gauge wire is getting warm at all. Not at all, not even the least bit. Okay, 2 minutes. 42.1, 349. 42.1, 349. Okay, come up on 3 minutes. 48.5, 49.0, and 338. 49.0 and 338. Okay, it's 1 a.m. I've been at this since 7 a.m. this morning and still not done yet. EVE number 3, 35 amp. Starting temp 28.1. 28.1. $373. 373. Okay, coming up on 1 minute. 34.9, 358. 34.9, 358. Come up on 2 minutes. 41.8, 42.3, 349, and 42.3. Felt the wires again. Not even warm at all. Room temperature. Okay, here we go. 3 minutes. 49.2, 337. 49.2, 337. Okay, let's analyze and do conclusion briefly from 35 amp. Already talked about Ampace. They did great. 344, 344. We're comparing with a Molicel, which did 330 and plus 26C. These did, you can see, 18 and 17. Okay, now the EVEs. Seeing a consistent theme, they both, no, this, it was 338, 337. It had just flipped 337, so you could call it even at 338. Plus 21.1, plus 21.0. Really consistent performance. But the big but is, and well, let's say the good news is, still the EVEs did better than the Molicel P50B and P45B. 337, 338 versus 330, and plus 21C versus 26. So still better performance than the P50B, and as I said before, remember, like 1/3 of the price. But if these and these are the same price, I know I'm repeating myself, but if they are or similar, obviously the Ampace consistently so far on all these amp ratings, amp loads, consistently performing better. And it's not even really a small amount. 344 compared to 338 and 17 compared to 21. That's a pretty significant difference. And like I said, if you compare it to the Molicel, 344 versus 330, that's huge. Initial voltage drop, where were we at? That's kind of interesting, huh? 373, 375, 374, 372. So initial, pretty similar on all of them. But in general, the trend continues, which is they all outperform the Molicel P50B, but with the EVE just incrementally outperforming it, and the Ampace more, significantly outperforming. So next is 40 amp. Let's see if I can get this done before 2 a.m. Okay, it's 2 a.m. Ampace number 1. 40 amp. Starting temp 28.9. $368 initial voltage drop. 368. Wires are not getting warm. Okay, 1 minute. 36.0, 356. 36.0, 356. Coming up on 2 minutes. P50B, I only ran out to 2 minutes. I need to redo it at 3 minutes. We were at 330 at 2 minutes. 330 on the Molicel. 44.2 and 345. 44.2 and 345. So that compares to 330 on the P50B. And you know what? The wires are getting just a little bit warm. Just slightly warm. So definitely going to shut this down in 3 minutes. Okay, 50.8, 331. 50.8 and 331. And that is it. Okay, giving everything a few minutes to cool down. Ampace number 2. 40 amps. And yeah, these wires were getting just a little bit warm at the end of the last test, so I think we're at the maximum amp draw we can do with 12 gauge wire with this length. Okay, starting temp 28.3. Let's get this one over with. .366 initial voltage drop. 35.9, 359. 35.9, 359. Come up on 2 minutes, and again P50B was 330 and 51.5. 43.7, 348. 43.7, 348. Okay, we're at 234. No, they're not hot at all, but you can feel they have warmed slightly, a little bit. I'd say like plus 10 degrees Celsius over room temperature. Anyway, better to end it now. Okay, 3 minutes. 50.7, 333. 50.7, 333. Okay, it's the next day, the next morning. I made it till 2 a.m. testing. I couldn't last longer than that. All right, we've got 2 more to do, 40 amps. And then we'll see if we can do more. I can't guarantee it. I'll try it. But anyway, so EVE number 2. So we're doing 40 amps at 3 minutes. Cells are nice and cool, very cool, because they charged overnight and then sat, and I just topped them up. So we have a very cool starting temperature, which is actually good, I think. So we're starting at 22.7. Here we go. .364 starting initial drop. Just as a comparison, the initial on the Molicel P50B was 354. So this is still doing better. Okay, coming up on 1 minute. 33.0, 349. 33.0, 349. Coming up on 2 minutes. Warming up quickly. 43.4, 340. 43.4, 340. Coming up on 3 minutes. Wires are getting just barely above ambient temperature. Not even what I call warm. By the way, I'm going to do the P50B for 3 minutes also. I just did it for 2 minutes before, so we have comparison. Okay, here we go. 52.8 and 328. 24.6. .363. Okay, come up on 1 minute. 34.9, 349. 34.9, 349. 2 minutes. 46.0, 340. 46.0, 340. Okay, we're coming up in 3 minutes. We're right at 53, so we are seeing 54 plus 30 Celsius. Pretty big temp increase. 54.8 and 328. 54.8 and 328. Let's analyze. Okay, so a quick recap of 40 amp and pretty interesting results. Let's just do this as briefly as possible. The quick conclusion is all tablets perform better than the P50B. Only thing is P50B I didn't run out to 3 minutes before because I was worried about temp increase. I'm going to run it now to 3 minutes just so we have to compare. It's charging right now. But anyway, we can still look at these results. P50B at the end of 2 minutes was at 330. The Ampace did way better, 345 and 348, almost 0.2 volts there, higher at the end of 2 minutes, which is great. Also, initial voltage drop, quite interesting. The Molicel was 354. Look at this, 368. That's a huge improvement, 366. EVs did better also, 364 and 363, but the EVs kind of fell apart after time, where the Ampace really kind of stayed strong. I won't go over 1 minute. You can see the results there and kind of, see for yourself. Anyway, it was 341. This was 356, 359, 349, 349. So the EVs, both the EVE and the Ampace were very consistent, the results between them, which is good. But going out to 3 minutes really tells a story. I'll measure, like I said, the P50B in 1 second, but we were look at the temp differences also, 331 and 333 for the Ampace. Now, kind of interestingly, let's look at 2 minutes. The Ampaces were at 345 and 348. Again, we're comparing to 330 on the Molicel. The EVs were 340 and 340, so still better, you know, quite a bit better than the Molicel, but the Ampace were still quite a bit better than the EVE. But interestingly, look at 3 minutes. Once you got out to 3 minutes, the differences were less. 331 and 333, and this was 328 and 328. Only 0.03 and 0.05. So the differences after 3 minutes were less than 2 minutes. Interesting, huh? Still did better. Oh no, we have to measure here our 3 minute for P50B. Temp increase though, very interesting. Big difference in temp increase. Here you can see what we were, 15, 15, 20, 21 for 2 minutes. Then look at 3 minutes here, plus 21 only, plus 22 only on the Ampaces, and we were plus 30 and plus 30.2. And to put in perspective, the Molicel after 2 minutes was plus 23. This was only 15, 15, and the EVs were 20 and 21. So a big difference in less temp increase on the Ampaces and the EV. You know, the Ampace still performed better. Okay, the golden child is back on the test stand. I thought this girl was retired. That's interesting. It's going 421, 420. But need to do some more tests now that these other cells are here. So just off the charger, obviously 26.4. We're doing it this time. I'm running 40 amp test out to 3 minutes, so we have a more valid comparison with the other cells. So we're at 26.3. $357, 37.2, 343, 37.2, 343. Okay, coming up on 2 minutes. Not really that hot so far, to be honest, but voltage drop. 52 and 333, 50.2 and 333. Okay, coming up on 3 minutes. Getting pretty warm. By the way, I do have more of these ordered and supposedly on the way. I've been waiting. Actually, all the cells I'm getting more samples of to check for consistency, but P50B especially been waiting for. Okay, getting pretty warm, but let's compare it to the tablets. 60.2, 322. Okay, so just did the calculations here. Yeah, that was definitely needed to do for science. So interestingly, initial voltage drop was just a little less, 357 versus 354 before. Temp increases 10, 11, 343, 341, 23.9, 23.6, 333, 330. So this second time it did a little bit better, but we're interested in the ending voltage. So we're at 322 after 3 minutes. That compares to 328 and 333, 33, 31. So still, obviously tablets did better, but a little bit smaller difference. No, 333 to 322, that's a pretty big difference. Temp increase, again, we see kind of the same pattern where the EVE is sort of a slight improvement over the P50B, plus 30 instead of plus 34, let's say. But look at the Ampace, only plus 21 and 22. 21 compared to plus almost 34 degrees. So that's a big improvement. So yeah, interesting. There's the result. The voltage at 3 minutes drop, 331, 3, 28, 28, 322. And here temperature increase after 3 minutes, 21, 22, 30, 30, and Molicel 34. Okay, do not try this at home. I am a licensed professional. No, actually a crazy high performance enthusiast. So what is this? You may have already guessed. My tester only goes to 40 amps. I was planning really to just test at 40 amps. That kind of proves the point of, you know, what's better and what's not. But as an enthusiast, I'm really curious on how these perform at 50 amps and maybe even 60. I don't know if this is going to work. I got the idea, well, because I have, sorry about that, I have several of these load testers, 40, this does 23, the other does 20. And I did see a video or picture of a crazy dude that basically like welded 5 different load testers to one cell to test it, which is, it's as nuts as this is. Anyway, don't try this at home. Basically, what you probably already gathered is I'm going to do 40 amp draw on this, which I've already done. I'm going to do 10 amps on this first to kind of test it, see how it goes. If everything works okay, I want to test the, you know, both of the tablets at 50 amps. Also, I kind of had an idea. The other reason why I really wanted to try this was on the P50B. If you saw in my P50B video and you watched through that, you saw where I mentioned that my opinion was that the 60 amp rating for the 50B versus the 50 amp rating for the P45B is just marketing, that they both have similar voltage drop even at those high loads. They both have similar, almost identical temp increase. And basically my point is that the 45B can handle 50 amp bursts just the same as a P50B can, and same with 60 amp, although they're both really not designed for either of those amounts. So I do want to try a 50 amp burst on the 50B and the 45B and the tablet. So let's first try this at 50 amps. Hopefully everything doesn't blow up and the test works okay. I'm, to be honest, a little nervous about it. Okay, first try at 50. The contraption is set up. I'm going to try to press start simultaneously on these. Doing the Ampace first, obviously this has performed better. If anything starts to get weird or smell weird or get hot or smoking, God forbid, obviously I'm going to shut it down. This is set at 40, small one is 10 amps. Try to start them at the same time. And yeah, stay a little no, anyway, it should be fine. Unfortunately, I don't have, you know, a huge load tester that does like 70 amps. So okay, on 3, oh wait, starting temp, very important, 23.8. So 1, 2, 3. $354. $354. It's out of focus. Is the initial voltage drop. They're both running. They're both running. I plan to run just to 1 minute. And then we'll see what the temps do. Everything seems okay. This, by the way, this thing, they rate it for 30 amps, but it clamps really tight. Okay, let's mark it at 1 minute. 35.8 and 344 it was. 35.8 and 344. Now, if everything seems okay, I'll run it out to 2 minutes. It's surprisingly cool. I mean, to be honest, only 40 Celsius, you're pulling 50 amps out of this guy. Holy crap, that's pretty damn impressive. Okay, we're at 1:30, 3:37. Sorry, the display looks a little out of focus. Kind of hard to get it. Okay, got to keep an eye on this. 44 Celsius. Still, honestly, it's not that warm. 50 amps for almost 2 minutes. Holy cow. Okay, I'm gonna let it run just a few seconds past 2 minutes and then shut down one and then the other. Okay, we are at 48.5 and 328. 48.5 and 328. Shutting down one mode and the second. Whew. Whew. It worked. By the way, these tests I'm doing now, this is the only time I'm ever doing this, effed up kludgy setup. I'm doing it for science because as an enthusiast, I want to know how these guys do at 50 amps. I'll try it at 62, but you know, for now, let's let's go with 50. And that test seems to have worked okay. Okay, 10 amps, 40 amps. EVE. By the way, I'm only running this on one of each of these cells. No reason to do this twice. 50 amps. So, starting temp, 26.8. 26.8 starting temp. Okay, gonna start on 3. 1, 2, 3. $360 initial voltage drop. .5 temperature, 348 volts. I made sure that this was on there very, very firmly. No, the spring holds it very tightly, but for pulling these amps, important the connection is good. Obviously, ideally welded, but anyway. Okay, here we come. 1 minute. 38.9, 341. 38.9, 341. Very, just slightly warm. Okay, coming up on 2 minutes. $53.7, 328. Definitely getting a bit warmer than the Ampace did, that's for sure, but that's been consistent. We're at 60 Celsius, 60.9. Okay, coming up on 3 minutes. Shut her down. $63.2. 64.4. 315 and 64.4. 315 and 64.4. Okay, this one I'm very excited about. It's to prove, no, first of all, it's just to compare how P50B does at 50 amps to the tablets. Since they rate it peak 60, so we're pulling 10, we're pulling 40, so 50 total. Just came off the charger. Super cool temperature, 21.7. I had to double check and make sure that was correct. 21.7. Anyway, gonna run it 2 minutes. That last one I ran it 3 minutes by accident. No, I was just concentrating too much. I meant to run it to 2. So P50B starting temp 21.7, 50 amps, and we're going to see how it does. And then we're going to test the 45B also at 50 amps to see if my theory is right about the marketing claim from Molicel of 60 amps for this. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. $341. 341 initial voltage drop. That went up quickly. I just went away to write for a second. We're already up to 33 degrees. Well, I guess it's not a surprise. Okay, coming up on 1 minute. Temp is really going up quickly there. 40.6, 329. 40.6 and 329. On the 45, if it's No, really getting too hot too quickly, I'll stop it before 2 minutes. Nothing's even warm, to be honest, so I think we're okay. Okay, coming up on 2 minutes, I'm going to shut it down. 58.3, 318. 58.3 and 318. Okay, now this should be interesting. Again, 10 and 40, so we're at 50 amps. This is P45B. P45B N2 that I use for most of the other testing as well. So I'm going to see everything's reset. Starting temp 24.1. 24.1. Gonna see how it does. If it starts heating up too much, I'll shut it down. I'll try to make it out to 2 minutes at 50 amps. But again, my theory is that 50 and 60 are going to be almost identical on the 45 and 50 because all the other curves are. And that Molicel saying 60 for the P50B Max is just marketing. So, okay, enough talking. Just making sure everything is all set. Temp probe, 24.2. Okay, here we go. 1, 3, 2, 1, go. .338 initial temp, initial voltage drop. 338. Okay, now for comparison, holy crap. Sorry about that. For comparison, at 1 minute, the P50B was 329 and it hit 40.6 Celsius, but it started cooler. But 329 was the voltage at 1 minute. And you can see we're already below that. Temp is not going up crazy, which is good. More voltage drop, that's for sure. Okay, 8, 9, 42.3 and 324. Getting pretty warm. I don't want to get anywhere near really above 70 C. Oh, I don't want to have to shut it down early, but come on, baby, come on. I want to blow on it just to help keep it cool a little bit, but that's not fair. Come on, just a little more, baby. 20 seconds. Come on. Come on, I want to see my 45Bs do how they do. This is my favorite price performance cell. 60 Celsius. Okay, we're going to be okay. Still not crazy. Okay, here we go. 157, 59, 62.1, 314. Shut it down. 62.1 and 314. Okay, let's do analysis about 50 amps now. So we tested one Ampace and one EVE at 50 amps. Initial voltage drop 354 on the Ampace, did the best. No, I'm sorry, it didn't. EVE did better, initial. So after 1 minute, we were, I can't see around my mount here, 344 and 341, pretty close, but the Ampace was a little better. Plus 12 and plus 12, so very similar temperature increase. At 2 minutes, Ampace was 328, EVE was 328, identical. Interesting, huh? Because most of the other, current levels, amp draws, Ampace did significantly better. Here they were equal, 26.9 and 24.7, so just a little more temp increase. So that's interesting that at the other currents, the Ampace really did a lot better, but at 50 amps, they're almost even, which is interesting. Now, I meant to end this test for all of them at 2 minutes, but I was concentrating so much on the EVE, watching it and make sure it didn't overheat. I actually ran that out to 3 minutes, so I didn't do it on the Ampace, but here you can see plus 37.6, so quite a bit of heating up, even when the tablet's after 3 minutes. Well, it's 50 amps, and we're down to 315. But as far as comparison, at 50 amps, look, they're almost equal. Now, what's interesting, to me at least, is how did the P50B which is there, and the P45B do at 50 amps. Remember, they're both marketed that they can handle this for peaks. 50B is 60. So initial voltage drop on the 45 went down to 338. 50B did a little better, 341. Okay, how does that compare to our tablets? 354 and 360. So both tablets did better for initial voltage drop. 354, 360 compared to 338 and 341. After 1 minute, look at the orange here. Keep an eye on the orange. 1 minute, 344, 341. And on the P45B, 324. 50B did a little bit better, 329. But both of these significantly better, 344, 341, 324, 329. So better. After 2 minutes, the P45B was at 314. The P50B 318, so a little bit better, not equal. The 50B did better, and these two were both tied at 328, but significantly better than either Molicel. So 2 minutes, 314, 318. This is 50 amps, and 328, 328. What about temp increase? 37.4, 36.6, almost identical temp increase. Here we had 24.7 and 26.9, so significantly less temp increase, more than 10 degrees less Celsius temp increase. So at 50 amps, yeah, I can safely say the Ampace and the EVE both outpace the Molicel 45B and 50B. 45B and 50B, though, as you can see, perform pretty darn closely. The 50B does edge it out just a little bit, little bit, few hundredths, but the 45B can also pull 50 amp peaks for short times. Okay, let's do this and get it over with. Can't believe I'm trying this, but for science I really want to know, I think people want to know 40 and 20. So, you know what that is? 60 amps. I'm only going to run it 1 minute. I don't know if anything seems funky. Obviously, I'm going to shut it down. 24.9 starting temp. They're both just off the charger. No, top charged fully and then topped up. 24.9, so we're going to go 40 and 20 for 1 minute, 60 amp, and see how they compare. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. $350 initial voltage drop. 350. I measured 30 seconds also. 31.9, 341. 31.9, 341 at 30 seconds. Okay. 42.6, 334. 42.6, 334. These are getting a little warm. Yeah, it's pushing it. It's definitely pushing it. Not going to do that again except for the other cell. Alright, one more like this. Let's get it over with. Just to show again, 40 and 20. 60 amps. This is EVE, obviously. 40 PL. Okay, starting temp 24.4. 24.4. And everything's set, zeroed out. 24.4. Okay. 3, 2, 1, go. $349. $349. Okay, gonna mark it 30 seconds. 31.8, 336. 31.8, 336. Little bit warm. Okay, 1 minute coming up. $42.2, 328. $42.2, 328. Oh shit. Okay. I can breathe out again, I think. We'll analyze. This is just to show 40 and 20. 60 amp load. Mother, you know. Okay, now 60 amp. Let's summarize it. What I just did, what you guys just saw. Ampace and EVE. So initial voltage drop 350 and 349, basically identical, almost exactly identical. Now I switch these over here. Let's go over here to 30 seconds. 30 seconds. The Ampace was at 341. The EVE was 336. So yeah, a little bit worse. Temp increase almost identical, +7 Celsius after 30 seconds. So little more voltage drop on the EVE. And then at 1 minute, which is here, we were 334 on the Ampace, 328 on the EVE. So yeah, the Ampace has done better all across the board, 0.06. And temp increase was almost identical after 1 minute, 17.7 plus and 17.8. So can say that both can do 60 amp peaks, no problem. Don't get that hot, I mean 17 degrees, but this is running, you know, all out for a minute. And again, the Ampace consistently does a little bit better on voltage drop, 334 versus 328. Pretty cool. Okay, very last test that I'm doing for this video. Yeah, 60 amps. Gonna try for a short time. P50B and P45B. Going back to my thesis that 60 amp claim is just marketing and that the 45 and the 50 both handle 60 amp peaks pretty similarly. Although we saw from my previous test that actually at 50 amps there was a little bit of a difference. 50B did do a little bit better. So anyway, I'm only going to run this for 30 seconds for obvious reasons. That these aren't, well, this is right. Anyway, I'm only going to run it for 30 seconds, but I do have a comparison. You know, we can compare initial voltage drop and 30-second with the tabless cells. But I'm just curious mostly to see how the 50 compared to the 45 handles some 60 amp bursts. So let's do this, get it over with, and only for 30 seconds. So everything's zeroed out. Oh, starting temp would help, 24.0. So 3, 2, 1, go. $332 initial voltage drop. $15 seconds, 328, 27.2. $33.5 and 324, 30 seconds. $33.5 and 324. I will let it run to a minute. If it doesn't look like it's gonna blow the house up, 45B, I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to run it for a minute though. Okay. No, we can run this to a minute. It looks like it's going to be okay. Alright. So, 47.2, 319. 47.2, 319. Oops, got to turn off the other one. 47.2, 319. So the P50B, it did 60 amp peak for 1 minute. Okay, and last but not least, here we go. My trusty favorite bread and butter P45B at 60 amps. Do not try this at home or anywhere else. I'm doing it for science and one time and that's it. Okay, so planning on 30 seconds. If it looks like it's not heating up too much, I'll run it out to a minute, but you know, we'll see. Starting temp 25.2. Notice it's 418. It is down like a hundredth or so. Came off the charger probably 5-6 minutes ago, and I didn't just top it back up. So keep in mind that we're starting like 1/200ths below the normal full charge. I'm not trying to cool the battery. I'm just making sure my apparatus is cool here. Okay, so starting temp 25.3. Everything's zeroed out. 20 and 40. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. $330 initial voltage drop. 330. $27.4, 323. 15 seconds. $36.6, 317. 317 and 36.6 at 30 seconds. I'll try and run it out to a minute. Okay, here we go. 51.3, 312. 51.3 and 312. 51.3 and 312. Okay, let's see how they compare. 60 amp conclusions quickly. Molicels, as you saw, they both did 60 amps. They both didn't explode or burn up, which is great. And the results are pretty similar. So let's look at initial voltage drop, 332 versus 330, P50 versus 45. After 30 seconds, 324 and 317, pretty close. After 1 minute, 319 for the 50B and 312 for the 45. So I would say that's very close results. Temp increase, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, no, 30 seconds, 9 and 11, and 23 and 26. So I think it kind of proves my point that they can both do 60 amp peaks. I think it's abusive for both of them to do 60 amp, but they can both do 60 amp peaks. This just proved it right there, and with not that big of a difference. Yeah, the 50B definitely did do better, but not a huge difference. Okay, next, let's compare the tablets at 60 amp to the Molicels. To me, this is a really interesting comparison. How much better did the tablets perform? Well, initial voltage drop, you see there, 350, 349, compared to 330 and 332. So quite a very significant difference for initial voltage drop. After 30 seconds, we were 341, 336 versus 1724. So yeah, big difference there too. And then after 1 minute, we were at, the Ampace consistently did the best, 334, EVE 328, and the Molicel 50B 319 and 45B 312. So pretty significant difference. Temperature increase, 30 seconds. The tablets were plus 7, 7.1, Molicels were plus 9 and plus 11. After 1 minute, tablets were plus 17.8, 17.7, almost identical. P50B was 23 and 45 was plus 26. So all the way across the board, at 60 amps, the tablets did better than both Molicels, but pretty significantly too, I would say. But what's interesting to me also is, look at 45 and 50, they can both do 60 amp peaks. So it is kind of a bit of marketing on Molicel's part that they say 50 for the 45 and 60 for the 50. They have pretty similar results at 60. So that's it for the testing. Hope you got something useful out of it. Okay, well my P50B is charging, waiting to do the 40 amp torture test for 3 minutes. I just went over all the pricing, and let's talk about that because that's kind of the bottom line, right? What everybody's interested in, of course, makes sense. I'm going to go over all these kind of scribbles and put links to all the places I found, obviously in the description of the video. And while I'm talking, I'm going to show you some still screenshots of the sites that I'm talking about. Let's start with the Ampace, and then we'll go to the EVE. Sorry, I didn't make a box around that. I need to start with this by talking a bit, and by the way, I have no relation to this site, 18650-21700.com. I am not affiliated with them, not sponsored or anything like that, but I feel a responsibility. I need to talk about this business and these guys. Owner's name is Austin. He's been super helpful in they didn't give me, I bought cells. Like always, everything in these tests I bought with my own money, as I've said before. So I need to talk about this because with the JP40, this site, they are big high power EV PEV enthusiasts. He's into the EUCs, I'm into the Surrons. They are really big proponents of tabless cells. He took a risk, was the first one to import these Ampaces into the U.S. Really the first person to import, first business to import tabless 2170s into the U.S. at all. And he invested into them and really strongly supports them, really has a lot of information on the site. He's done some videos on his own channel. And he's just an ardent supporter of tabless technology, which I 1,000,000% agree with, that tabless is the future. You've seen, obviously, from the tests here already, they provide better performance, whether it's incrementally better or a lot better. I think over time it's going to get to be a lot better. But now you can even see they provide better performance. Anyway, long story short, this guy is really supporting tabless technology. They invested in them, they brought them into the US, and they're really promoting and trying to show people, as I am in this video too, why tabless is better. So my point is, if you're in the US, okay, obviously it's a little bit more. He's got to have a little profit margin to survive. He made a big investment to bring these in, and he's marketing these cells. But if you're in the US, I would suggest that you buy from 18650-21700 from this small business, American small business, instead of Alibaba, just to support them because they're supporting the community and the high performance, battery and PEV community by being the first in the country, in the U.S. and the world to bring these tablet cells into the country. So yeah, it's a little more expensive, but. So what did I say? I didn't say yet. $475 is his price for 130 plus quantity. Plus, they're in stock in the U.S., so if you're in the U.S., you can get them right away. All these other prices I got, all the other places I talked to in Alibaba, these are all sea shipping. So you're going to be looking at 4 to 6 weeks to get them, whether it's in U.S. or EU. And obviously, if you're in New Zealand, it's going to be longer than that. So if you're in U.S., I really recommend buying from this site because they support, they're the innovators in bringing these to the market. If you're in the EU, obviously, if you buy from this site, you're going to have plus shipping and you're going to have plus 23% VAT, which, that's your thanks for being in the EU. Anyway, okay, so next, let's talk about, but as a service to viewers and as myself, a person who does research shopping and tries to find the best deal possible, as you saw from my Surron build video that I did it myself for much less than retail price, I need to provide the information on the other alternatives. So I'm going to show screenshots, and I'm going to call these sellers Alibaba 1, 2, 3, and 4. In the description, I'll put links to which is 1, 2, 3, and 4 because it's confusing with the names. Best prices I found on the Ampaces are right around $3 each. That's without shipping and without, obviously, VAT if you're in the EU. Put the screenshot. Alibaba number 1, they have them at $305 each for 200 quantity. All these, by the way, I'm talking about 200 quantity because I am in the Surron world and thinking about 200 for a Surron battery. So $305 each. Their shipping was $107.20 to the US, so that comes to about 54. Hold on, let's straighten out here. That comes to about 54 cents per cell. So what does that come out to? Like $360 approximately each. And again, it's sea shipping. It's going to be, a month and a half. EU shipping, I believe, is a little bit less, but again, you're gonna have to pay that 23% VAT. Alibaba seller number 2, which is called Xi'an Starlit Technology, I believe. They have the Ampace for $315 each, same quantity. 78 shipping to EU, 90 to USA, again C shipping. AliExpress doesn't sell the Ampace at all, so that's not even an option. Alibaba seller number 3, again I'll put links. Their price to me, their quote was $435 each, plus 85 shipping to US. And Alibaba seller number 4, Shenzhen Vape Cell Technology, they were $3 each, which is the lowest price. But anyway, so those are the prices I got in EVs. Now, I need to mention something just in general about buying from Alibaba. I was kind of reluctant to even make these links, to recommend these, to mention these, because Alibaba, as you probably know, is more of a manufacturer to manufacturer, a business to business site platform, and not an end user platform. These sellers that you find on Alibaba, you are talking to either manufacturer, manufacturer's rep, a wholesale distributor. They in general, like most of these battery companies, they're not manufacturers, they're wholesale distributors that carry a bunch of different batteries. But they work with, like, for example, Chai Battery, or you've got a battery manufacturer in France, or Electron Cycle in UK. They work with selling thousands and thousands of cells to knowledgeable buyers. They're not set up to answer your 50 questions about, oh, what is better if I have the 2,000 watt motor on my 2021 EUC. No, these are not. Don't bother these guys with a bunch of idiotic questions. I mean, I hate to put it so bluntly, but these are professional sellers that in general sell mass quantities, and know your 200 purchase of $3 cells, that's not a mass quantity. Sorry, $600 is not a big order for them. Just if you do go to Alibaba, do your research in advance. Hopefully my work here and my channel helps with that research a lot. Know what you want. Don't inundate them with dumb questions, and know what you want, determine the pricing, and place your order, because these are really business to business sellers. They're not set up like retail shop that can answer 100 questions, small questions about your purchase. Do your research in advance. Know what you want. They're going to be nice. They'll answer your questions, but just don't bother them with a lot of questions. Okay, next, EV40PL. So, interestingly, the EVEs are more expensive almost everywhere I looked. I say interestingly because if you see from my testing, in general, I mean, in my opinion, the results show pretty clearly the JP40 Ampace performed better than the EVE, which really surprised me because I was expecting very similar performance. So anyway, very short version. Alibaba number 2, $390 each. There's your shipping. This is again to US, C shipping. AliExpress, US, they don't ship at all, period. To AliExpress doesn't. EU, you can buy them on AliExpress. You're going to pay $9.40 per cell. That's in quantities of 10. They don't sell huge quantities, so that's not a good option. Alibaba number 3 has them for $476 plus 85 shipping. That's kind of expensive. This is Qiangyang. This was the same seller. I'll put a link. They're the ones, if you see my previous video, that were selling the copy Lishan cells for $1.30 each. So I don't know if that means a sketchy seller or not, but just keep that in mind. Alibaba number 4, which is the same Shenzhen Vape Cell Technology, they have the EVEs for $355 each plus 105 shipping. So there is, and keep in mind, again, all these prices, you're talking more performance, less capacity, obviously, like 15% less capacity, but significantly better performance than the Molicel P50B, which those are what, $11, $12, $13, $14 per cell. Now you can get that performance for, between $3 and $4.75 per cell, which to me is pretty cool news and pretty amazing. So what's the conclusion here? Well, Again, I had recorded a really long voiceover for this. I scrapped it. Here's a very short version. Now, as my test showed, the tabless cells provide a real increase in performance. Voltage drop and temp increase is better on both of them than even the best traditional tab cell right now, which is a Molicel P50B. Especially considering that both of these tabless cells are about 1/3 the price of the P50B. The performance, I would say, is pretty amazing. Also, especially considering that both of these cells have 20% approximately less capacity than the P50B. Why that's significant is that, for example, my test, let's say 35 amps at 3 minutes. Let's say that test uses 2,000, for example, 2,000 milliamp hours of capacity. In that case, you've used 50% of both of these 4,000 milliamp hour cells. You've used 50% of the capacity, but you've only used 40% of the P50B's capacity. So all other things equal, a higher capacity cell is going to show less voltage drop. So the fact that these showed much less voltage drop than the P50B, even being 20% less capacity, it makes the results all the more impressive. Now, if you're comparing these, we've talked about the P50B, but say, for example, you're comparing these to the P45B, because they're pretty similar in pricing right now, depending on what market you're in. Well, that's a really interesting choice between those two, and I actually am making that choice now for the next Surron pack I'm building. The Ampace clearly beats the P45B in performance, much better performance, but the question mark here is the longevity of the tabless cells, both of them, and obviously the brand name in the case of Ampace is unknown compared to Molicel, known as a brand name. But, and here are the buts, not everything is rosy in tabless battery land. Here are the negatives that I believe these tests revealed. First of all, the performance of the EVEs was disappointing compared to what I was expecting. As my tests show, the results for the EVE 40PLs were only incrementally better than the P50B. And again, don't say pre-production. Do not say pre-production. These are not pre-production. I was expecting more performance from the EVEs. And even though the Ampace JP40s did much better than the P50B, I was actually expecting even a little bit better performance from them. The reason is Mooch's testing. In Mooch's testing, he showed, for example, with a 40 amp draw, he showed 0.2 volts better initial voltage drop with the Ampace than the P50B. I never got that good of a result. I never got 0.2 volts better voltage drop from the Ampace. So in fact, I was expecting better an initial voltage drop from both cells than what I saw. The last possible negative for both of these tablet cells is cycle life. I mentioned it before, just briefly. Mooch has said he did some initial cycle testing on the EVE cells, and so far those tests look good, but both manufacturers, they make it very clear in their technical information that if you use these tablet cells hard, which means high amp charging and high amp discharge, like they're meant to be used, the cycle life of these tablet cells will be greatly reduced. So keep that in mind. And finally, hey Molicel, when are you going to come out with a tablet cell? We're all waiting here for the tabless Molicel. The P60B that you've announced, it's pretty much already obsolete. Come out with a tablet cell. And Samsung, hello, Samsung? Anybody there? Anybody? Has Samsung just disappeared? So that's it. Hope you got some useful information out of the video. Thanks for watching.